All right, so our next speaker is Dr. Olaf Riess, and apart from being one of the coordinators of the SolveRD, he's also a full professor for medical genetics and director of the Institute of Medical Genetics and Applied Genomics at the University of Tübingen. So his talk is titled SolveRD 2.0, where he's going to talk about the vision for the future for the SolveRD. We're very excited to hear your talk.
Thanks, Gulcim, for this very nice introduction. Dear colleagues, dear friends, after having 5 years of hard work together, of networking extremely successful, of having solved so many patients' diagnoses, of having established fantastic working also bioinformatic or genome analytical networks, it is really sad to say that we have no SolveRD 2.0 yet. But we hope, of course, that we will succeed in application for SolveRD 2.0. But this is because we just learned in fantastic way from Timothy, we have to have a diagnosis. So, and it was really to all of us, I think, a surprise that even with analyzing just whole exome sequencing, we made so many diagnoses, and it's not just that we established these diagnoses in these patients. We also prevented long-read sequencing, short-read whole genome sequencing, multi-omics, and many ways of these patients to enter the healthcare system again and again and again, just to receive a diagnosis. So it was fantastic, efficient that we implemented a structure for genome reanalysis. I think I don't really have to remind you that having a diagnosis is absolutely essential, not only for the treatment, what we hopefully all envision for many of the diseases, but it is really essential that a patient communicates with a doctor with a different doctor, a doctor with health insurance and authorities, that he knows, the medical doctor, more about disease progression, disease management, and of course, also for the patient. It's very important to know a disease by name and not just saying, I have some movement disorders, and really to communicate with other patients or via the internet, getting information and so on. Now, there's always these arguments by authority and healthcare insurance that genomic diagnostic costs so much. But when you look at these, let's say, visionary person, Clayton Christensen, who was responsible for Obamacare as well, he wrote in his book, Innovator's Prescription, that the US alone spends between 20 and $30 billion per year due to wrong diagnosis of the patient. And he actually selected molecular genetics as #1 of technology to change this. #2 came imaging, #3 was telecommunication. I think today will be AI and so on. So, but molecular genetics is the one to reduce this burden in the healthcare system, and we have to remind our politicians that it is. And very unfortunately, and I show this slide, and you know the slide over and over again, with the whole exome sequencing, we only solve maximum of 50% of all patients with rare diseases. That means that worldwide, 150 million patients would remain unsolved. This is one of the largest country population based in the world if we would take just the population side together, and in Europe we would have 15 million unsolved. But Gulci made it clear not all the patients even have access to our exome sequencing. So this also has to, we have to come up with a solution for this as well. I think that's why we do not solve whole exome sequencing all the patients, is we do not know all monogenic diseases yet. There are novel disease mechanisms, technical limitations, also these homologous regions, these so-called pseudogenes. Also, I mentioned it, I think, yesterday or 2 days ago. The T2T has identified 99 new genes, so it will be interesting whether they will be, associated with diseases. And of course, we have the epigenome and. So basically, the whole genome sequencing is the next logical step, what has to enter our healthcare system across the world to solve these diseases and having a starting point in the end for treatment. I just show you again this slide showing that exome analysis has a potential to detect point mutations, small indels, and so on. But when you look already at the copy number structural variations and so on, you see that the exomes really detect only a few of these variants at all, and that we have to move to genomes. And my personal view is also we have to move to the long-read genomes very quickly. And for the biomarker thing, what we discussed, of course, we need to have transcriptomics, but also transcriptomics will solve a lot of these unknown variants what we have in the genome, and the group from Julian Garnier yesterday showed quite a lot of examples in this regard. Now, I also believe that the epigenomes plays a role, and we have no real good clue about this, I have to say. I mean, we know these some diseases which are clearly caused by methylation differences and so on. And again, the long read sequencing may provide the tool to have it all in one analyzed, so the epigenome, or let's say part of the epigenome, and the long read structural things. So point is technology development, exploration, that all what we already started in SolveRD. We have shown, or we have seen also a lot of examples where these long read technologies in also transcriptomic really solved cases. So I think I'm very optimistic that we have, a long and good journey in front of us to increase the diagnostic sensitivity significantly. Now, how did we do this in SolveRD? We have this data analysis task force. We have this data interpretation task force, extremely efficient, extremely networking together. They looked at the copy numbers, at this SNVs, as de novo, and transposons, and so on. But they still have quite a way to look for the epigenomics and the structural variants and so on. This is ongoing, and luckily we all agree to work together even beyond funding is running out right now for SolveRD. So conclusion would be, reanalysis of genome data is a must. Reanalysis has more potential in the genomes than in the exomes. This will be way more complex. We know this already. So we need more DETF capacity, and we have to involve not just a few ERNs or UDNIs, but also most of the European countries and all the ERNs. Definitely, we have to solve the problem of data storage. And I think we have to closely work together with the 1 Million Genomes projects, and of course also with the national and local system. And there's quite some interesting approaches in regard to swarm learning and so on. I think we all agree that we can't store all the data at one place, so it has to be a federated system. And we are working together with Joachim Schulz in Bonn on making the swarm learning available also for the rare diseases. Now, conclusion number 2, novel omics technologies will need to be added significantly. We may have an RD reference sample in the T2T approach, because I think there will be also novel nomenclature will come for the whole genomes. We have to set, and I think we are in a good position to do so, standards for the omics technologies. And as I said, we need this expertise for this. Now, how do we move it into healthcare? So one point is already that we can use the joint action of integration of ERNs into the national healthcare system, the Jardine project, where a pilot of 100 unsolved RD patients using DITF, DETF structure is entered into the national healthcare. We know it's 100, it's not a lot, but it's a pilot. It's there to really encourage the national healthcare system to move into this, into diagnostics. And SolveRD 2.0 should also have a touch, I think, to the conclusion nobody should be left behind. We all know that we have developing countries, we have a lot of genetic diversity in Europe, and I think we have to establish SolveRD partnerships, and there are some partnerships between some of the universities in Europe, in Africa. So I think this is a good start where we should be involved. The Guild Cluster of Excellence is one part what I mentioned. Conclusion number 4. Multi-omics analysis will lead to the discovery of novel genes and novel disease mechanisms. So that means the RDMM structure needs to be continued and extended. This is a fantastic network, what we have established, well functioning across the world. So that was also one part of the major success what we had with RDMM, and we successfully confirmed the cloning of novel disease genes. So that is something we have to continue. We could extend it also to look at the variants of unknown significance, what we clinically cannot value right now. So it could be looking for these VOS competence centers as well and using the RDM infrastructure. So we will have to discuss this internally. Also, we thinking about the quality of life of rare disease patients, we have to say that also patients with rare diseases will develop during their life, or many of them, common diseases. And having the genomes analyzed, we have all the information what we need to look into the common ones in regard to the ACMG genes, which affects about 8% of our population, selected PRS scores, pharmacogenomics, and so on. This would be of benefit to all patients and also to all RD patients. So quality of life, I think, is really something, and preventive medicine is another thing. We talked a bit or discussed this, and Timothy has a wonderful talk on this, on the theranostic part. I think we should link the theranostic part also with the registries. So having a responsibility to go into the mutation, one medicine story here as well. Now, how do we do this, or how would we like to achieve it? We know that SolveRD is really a fantastic, efficient, and very successful network, and it could be used as a blueprint for European research program in solving the unsolved. So we should and could and will establish, very strong interaction with the RD partnership program, RDP, and the applications are on the way, and Daria is here, and you may touch this later in the discussion, I hope. So she will be able to talk a bit more about this. So I think that would be a fantastic strategic opportunity really to work together, not to work together, to have it all in once and driving this to the next step. So we have these core elements established. They will working on the long reads and short read genomes. We have these extended technologies, optical mapping, transcriptomes, epigenomes, and so on. We have these structures which are working, and we could use it and extend these structures, developing it further to move SolveRD into SolveRD 2.0. Thank you so much for your patience. Yes.